tonight's topic, working with Android devices with your Mac. As you can see, I've plugged my Sony phone into my Mac, and I've got the Sony Xperia Companion app running. It's plugged in and it's mounted. First of all, what you have to do before you plug it in, you've got to make sure you've got your phone unlocked, screen open, and you've got to have the USB debugging set to transfer files instead of just charge. Then it'll let you say, okay, I can see your Sony or whatever Android if you've got a different app or a different phone, and then it'll say, right, I can see this. Most of them will let you say, I want to browse your phone, or I want to transfer photos to the computer, or I want to transfer music to your phone, or migrate from an old phone to your new phone. So the one that they usually do is just go click browse, and up comes your internal storage, SD card if you've got one, and it comes up with just a list of folders, and that's usually folders based on what app runs it. So I don't really use all that many apps, but this is just after a new install. So you've got things like Zedge, where you can get new themes, new ringtones, new notification sounds. So for one of my friends, I've got Red Wine, and it just plays that every time he calls. Whenever Andrea calls, I've got I'm a Gummy Bear. I've got an alarm, which is a foghorn, and I think incoming message from Iron Man for my text messages, and from my notification messages, and R2D2 for my text messages. That's basically an app-supported app, and I think it's also on iOS. A lot of younger people use it, so it's cool, but the ads are kind of strange. And then you've got your basic music folder. There's no music on the internal storage, but if you go over to the SD, there's a huge amount of music, and it'll take a little bit of time to open up. And I've actually got something like about 20 gigabytes of music just all loaded up off my iTunes.
I noticed, just as a matter of interest there, that looks like iTunes style file names, but they're not organised into albums. It's actually sorted by track number one of this album.
It's all sorted by track numbers. Yeah. But I transfer them in two ways. I transfer them by the most played list of 2,500, and a few playlists which I had specifically of purchased music. Then I've got clips of movie trailers that it came with, downloads. The DCIM folder is common to just about every digital camera device there. So you got things like Facebook, Google Photos, Line, Xperia specific photos, and you've got the 100 Android folder, which is the one that's actually the default camera folder.
What's Line?
Line is a Japanese chat app. It's basically like Facebook Messenger but secure. And yeah, so at some stage I'll be using this app to transfer over to the new phone, which is hopefully coming if Sony stays in New Zealand. If not, I'll have to figure out how to get it imported. But yeah.
So in principle, all that, you can just drag and drop files.
Yep, just drag and drop files.
And out of the folders, so you can
Yep.
do it both ways.
Yep, you can do it both ways. Android file transfer is similar to this particular part of the program, but it's an older application. It's only 32-bit, so it's not worth getting if you're going to be going up to 10.15. Sorry?
They're going to make a 64 upgrade.
Of Android, who does Android file transfer? Do you happen to know? Is it
That's a Google.
That's Google, okay.
That's a Google standard application.
So Google's basically dragging the chain in terms of updating it. What you're saying.
Yeah, they released it about 7 years ago, and then
Right.
just did nothing with it.
Yeah.
Well, you've got Xperia. Is that the name of the app? Or something
That
like
Sony Xperia it's the Sony brand. Xperia is their brand for mobiles. The model is the X, and the specific model name is that, and that just means that it's a single SIM variant.
So that's basically Sony's software for managing their Android phones.
Yeah.
It does. You said it works with non-Sony phones as well.
Not all of it will work with non-Sony phones, but in practice, you'll get common things and some things. I mean, some generic phones you'd be best just sticking to Android file transfer. Samsung phones, I think they used to have keys, but they no longer do it, and so now you've got to do what something like Margaret said, like Handshaker or any of the other cheap apps on the Mac App Store that are offered. Like they do that sort of thing. It's really just a question of whether you find an English version of the help files in these one-off apps in the Mac App Store. But when a manufacturer does an official app, then it's actually best to use that app, and hopefully they will actually have a useful help manual.
Manuals, what are those?
I know. I tend.
Facetious. Anything about this for some reason.
Well, I mean, the only thing which I will say I've actually found specifically useful in this one is the software repair. And that was, I had an issue. My phone was just about fully full. It had less than 2 gigabytes on the internal, and it was playing up. So I was getting constant freezes. I'd have to restart the phone every day or so, or maybe twice a day. And this was going on for the last 3 months. I wanted to do it before I went away on holiday, but I didn't have time because it's actually a huge firmware update over the internet. When I got back and I had some time, it took 2 hours to download on a 1 gigabit connection, with no one else using their devices at home, and it just chugged along, and then it finally just went boom, and I had to start from fresh, except for the SD card.
Now, can I backtrack for a second? At the beginning of this, you mentioned having to put the Android phone into a special USB mode. What was that?
Yeah, so this special USB mode. First you unlock, then you connect, and then it'll bring up a 3-bit dialogue. Up the top it'll say, do you want this to charge?
Oh, right, yeah.
In the middle it'll say, do you want to transfer files? And on the bottom it'll say, do you want to just transfer photos? So.
Okay, because I'm just having a look, and I've got a Samsung Android phone, and I've got its developer features turned on.
Yeah.
Can't remember how I did, but it's
Yeah,
got
there's a special way to turn on developer
So
features.
it's got a USB configuration mode. I'm wondering if that's the same thing. So it's got choices of charging, media transfer protocol,
Yep.
picture transfer protocol,
Yep.
which I know there's
Yep,
two
those are the three.
ways of doing the photos.
Yep.
Something called RNDIS USB Ethernet, that says, which I think is like a
That's a special one that's for tethering.
yeah. Audio
And-
source or MIDI are the two other choices there. So I'm
Yeah.
curious if this would support general file transfer, or whether it's limited to photos, but I never tried it. So.
The general file transfer is called media.
It is the media one. Okay, all right. So
So that would do everything, files and photos?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can send files and photos through media, but if you select photos, then you can only select photos because it treats itself as a camera, and
Yep.
it'll
So
probably
I'm
fire
aware of
up
that.
the image capture app.
Yep, I'm aware of that with other digital cameras. Some brands of cameras only support picture transfer protocols. So
Yep.
when you plug them into the computer, they don't appear as a mounted volume on Finder.
Yep.
They only appear as an image capture source. Whereas the ones that support full media transfer, if you plug them in, they appear as a disk on the desktop. You have to eject them before you unplug them, all that sort of thing. So that's the distinction.
Yeah.
And it's the same principle here. So basically, yeah. Okay.
The thing is, it won't appear as a mounted volume normally on the Mac desktop. It'll only appear as a mounted volume on the app.
Okay.
That's mainly because it's not fully Mac compatible. I mean, it doesn't actually speak the Mac volume system. So what it needs is it does need the transfer app so that it can actually talk to the Mac file system.
Yeah, so it probably isn't appearing as a file system the Mac recognises, at least. Interesting, I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, that's probably getting too deep at the moment.
Is that to do with your app, or are we talking about the choice
Well,
you've made with the USB?
It's just the format of the storage. The format of the storage is actually Linux based, but
Yeah.
it's not one that Apple normally supports.
Yeah, because I thought that if you plug in something that supports media transfer protocol, it actually just, the Mac pretends that it's a standard file system and lets you access the files on it, but I haven't looked into it deeply enough to know if that's anything to do with the file system it's using on the device itself, or whether it's sort of a standard that it's supposed to follow. I'm just curious why it didn't mount normally. So anyway, something else involved, obviously I wasn't aware of.
So Andrew, does your one enable you to do it by Wi-Fi if you want to? Because under Wi-Fi you don't have to do anything with the USB.
There is another way, which I was going to get to. Thank you for asking. On the device, you can get a program which has got well over 50 million installs on the Pro version, called Astro File Manager, and that's been around for almost 10 years, and that is well worth I think it's $7, or at least it was 3 years ago. And you basically just get it, run it, and you get, I think there's a couple of extra modules which are free, that for Bluetooth and one other thing. But basically from the go you can get it to share over Wi-Fi, you can get it to access your Mac from Wi-Fi, you can get it to access Windows PCs from Wi-Fi, you can get it to access Linux PCs, anything on the same Wi-Fi network or Ethernet it can access, and it can do cloud it can manage your applications, so it can back them up to the SD card if you've got one. It can also manage your files, sort of like the file system that's now become available on the Files app in the iPad. And you can transfer between cloud systems, so it's got Dropbox and OneDrive and all that sort of support.
What was that called? It's actually called
Astro.
It's called File Explorer by Astro brackets File Manager, as far as I can see.
It's there may be some that are similarly named, but it'll be the one that's got over 50 million installs.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
617,000 reviews,
yeah.
50 million plus downloads. That's the
Yeah,
one.
that's the one. Yeah,
Right, so I can show you, I found
it's had over 50 million downloads for about 5 years now.
That's what it looks like.
So it's not quite reached 100 million.
File Manager by Astro.
But
So it's recommended.
it's been recommended for about the last 9 years. There isn't one like it on iOS, but I expect that may be coming with the next version of iOS.
So the point of this is if we somehow are able to end up with a phone bank.
Yeah.
If you have an Android phone for whatever reason, so I don't want to spend this money on an iPhone, so not get an Android, or you've got one through Windows.
I mean, I'll point out. So my cousin Leah, who some of you have heard of, she's got an iPhone for her personal use, but her work site issued her with a Samsung. So I've told her, well, why don't you just get a dual SIM phone, talk to your work about it, and then just have one number ringing for your work and one number ringing for your home, and you'll be carrying only one phone. But she said, no, I don't want to do that just yet. But
when I got my current job, I had a similar choice. They actually gave me the option of taking over my mobile account and then paying for my phone and letting me keep my phone number. But that would mean that work controlled my phone account, and I wasn't keen on that idea, so I deliberately chose.
yeah, I think there was something similar to
And
what
it
they said
also
to her.
meant that they supplied me with an Android phone, which meant I had an Android phone, where for the rare occasions I actually want to know more about it, or it gives me some more options to run its offline and stuff like that. So that's just basically the same. I have to remember to pick it up in the morning on Monday because it normally sits on charge all weekend. This morning I got as far as the end of the road and then I forgot and I had to go in and get it again because I didn't use it apart from my work.
Yeah.
Don't you leave it in work?
No, so it comes home with me just in case anyone needs to ring me on my work number. I normally have it set to do not disturb from about 7 PM until 8 the next morning, whatever it is. So.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions?
Okay, so I think that covers any questions?
Well, just presumably the phone has a space for a card.
Yeah. Most Android phones have space for a card unless you've got a Google Pixel or an even older Google Nexus. The main point of differentiation with the SD cards is some brands, they let you use the SD card as extra storage. So if you get a fast enough class-free micro SD card, then you can use it to expand the storage of your phone for not much cost really. Or if not, then they'll just use it. Then they'll just let you use it just for your documents and backing up apps and that sort of thing, but not actually use it as actual memory for your phone.
Right, just an example. Manage to get the back off. So that's my Samsung phone. You can take the back off to replace its battery, and there's its SIM card. I think the SD card is actually under the battery, so I don't want to take the battery out without filling it too much. But there's normally a hidden slot inside them, rather than this is designed to be a robust one.
That's the other thing, of course, is half of them you can take the battery out, half of them you can't.
Yeah.
The older ones you can take the battery out of.
Yeah. The ones from about 2014.
And this phone it's robust because it's already been helpful. I had a slip when I was out for a walk about a month ago, and I had both my iPhone and this one in my pocket. This one always stays on the outside. It has a hardened case on the outside. I landed on this side, but I then flipped over and landed quite hard on my pocket, which had these. So there's now a dent in the back of this phone.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Samsungs are actually worse than iPhones for breaking, unless you've got a case.
Well, this one hasn't got a case. It's just it's a Galaxy that's covered, not one of the major Galaxy models. So it's designed as being a more robust work phone rather than and it's a generic lower level one rather than a high-end sort of front.
Right. Yeah. But that's the thing. I tend to go for either. I used to go for Motorola's, but now I'm with Sony, and they've got the really durable ones. But even so, the next one I get, I'm going to have a couple of cases for.
Okay.
So what happened to Motorola?
They got
bought by Google and then got sold to the Chinese, didn't it? Google
now it's owned by Lenovo.
Lenovo, that's right. Yeah.
Is it right?
Yeah.
And so,
they make this. Lenovo makes their own cell phones, which is basically the remnant of Motorola. After Google spent billion plus dollars on it, and then lost about the same amount of money in very rapid succession.
yeah.
I used to have a Motorola many years ago, and it was the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah. Well,
And some time ago, when my Samsung went down the toilet, literally, and I was forced to get a replacement, I bought a Motorola. That was only last year. I was so disgusted with it, I took it back to the shop.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They do have,
and
unfortunately, a lot of very cheap ones.
And
Right.
it was, I said, "Look, this is way below my pay grade, take it back."
Yeah,
I was disgusted.
yeah, Motorola specialises in a lot of cheap and cheerful basic Android models, which are only really useful if you want one that's just stock Android without any junk apps on it.
It wasn't all that cheap either.
Oh, was it?
No.
Oh, okay, well, so it was the X or something like that. Yeah, that's their good one, but that's not.
Well, I wasn't impressed.
Yeah, that's not normally what other people would call a great one, and yeah. There you go, Margaret.
Got the Xperia, if you want to use it with Wi-Fi, you have to get this other, Astro File Manager, to do that. It's not contained within the Sony.
No, the Xperia app only goes through the cable because it goes through syncing at full speed on USB. Basically, because if you were to be transferring over from one Xperia to another or a different phone, then it would take an excruciating amount of time to do it over Wi-Fi.
But if you're just downloading things between friends, it can be quite handy to use the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, that's where you would use something like Astro. You'd use Astro to say take things off your Mac or to your Mac over Wi-Fi, and it goes at Wi-Fi speed. But again, you know, your mileage may vary.
The thing on Astro was Astro just deleted everything on Wi-Fi and doesn't enable you to do any transfers.
It does let you do transfers. It does let you do transfers, but basically you're doing it at Wi-Fi speed, or you're doing it at the speed of just a on-the-go charge sync cable.
In effect, Astro as a file server runs on the Android device, so Mac sees it as a file server it can receive files from. So I'm assuming you don't need to run anything on the Mac, you access it from.
No, you don't need to run anything on the Mac because the Mac's already got SMB on it.
Yes,
So you
it's
just
like a file server, so you just connect to it as any other file server, so you need to know how to do that.
so the only thing that you do is if you want to serve up SMB, then you need that module, and if you want to do it over Bluetooth, then you need the Bluetooth module as well.
But if you go
But I mean, those are free downloads and they're very small.
so it just makes Android read where you don't put anything on the Mac, whereas with Handshaker you put the app on both of them and then it does everything.
Yeah, that's what I understand of Handshaker and most of the apps like that go from the Mac. There's another one which I've seen for older phones, which if you're still keeping them like I'll be doing, and you want to use them, it's called Remote Mouse. That's got a few million installs, I think, and that lets you use your old phone as a trackpad or mouse. And that works over Wi-Fi. So you just have.
There's an iPhone version of it as well, which I got ages ago, but I never needed it, so I haven't bothered.
Yeah.
I don't think I do. It isn't.
Yeah. The advantage of that is you can actually use it on iPad or tablets, so you can get a huge trackpad or mouse, and it's got functionality to have a little keyboard in it, so you can have the function keys and everything. So that's the neat part about that application, but that's the premium part of it. So I think that's $2.81 for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
I'll need to take over again when you're ready.
Yep. Okay.
yet. Make sure that doesn't lose its cap. If it goes and loses its cap. Right. Swap size. Yep. Reattach my laptop. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the current versions of iWork and demonstrating the differences between the iPad and the Mac versions of these applications. So, as an example, I'm going to use Keynote because, as it happens, I would like to create a Keynote presentation similar to the one I did last night on iMacs, but covering the laptop. So I'm going to start creating that. I won't do the whole thing because it's going to take too long. But to give you an idea of the differences, I'll just start working on it on one and switch to the other one to give you a feel for what's going on. So, plug that back in again, make sure we've got all the video. So to explain what we've got here behind me, on this side is my iPad. So that's my iPad and that's my Mac. And have to wait for the computer to catch up, is having to think about the projector. So both of these are on the internet right now, yes. And if I hop over on the Mac to the current version of Keynote, which is not running, so I need to run it. Still catching up. Seems to take a while to work out what's going on after I plug in the projector. It gets a bit lost until it's settled down. Keynote, where are you hiding? Somewhere down here? Nope, don't see it. That one there, the new version of Keynote. So just to explain briefly, Apple, as you're probably aware of the history, iWork 09, which was the last version that Apple distributed on DVDs, that was released around the time of Snow Leopard, got updated a few times up to Mountain Lion. After that, Apple switched to a complete rewrite of all the iWork applications, that's Pages, Numbers and Keynote, starting with macOS 10.9 Mavericks, and since then, roughly every year they've come out with a new version, which is, for the most part, in sync with the latest operating system. For the last probably 3 years or so, they've been releasing new updates every 6 months to a year, which have got sort of a moderate set of new feature improvements, and they've gradually caught up with the features that they took away from the old iWork 09 applications. So they've now caught up to a point where I find that they're usable enough that I'm no longer regretting not being able to run the old ones anymore. And the other factor I've noticed is that for at least the last 2 or 3 versions, you don't have to be running the very latest operating system to use the latest version of the application. You need to be running either the latest operating system or the one before it. So at the moment you can run the latest version of Pages, Numbers and Keynote using High Sierra or Mojave. But I expect that at some point in the not too distant future they'll come out with another new version that will drop support for High Sierra, so you'll then have to be running Mojave or 10.15, but I don't know what the timing will be for something like that. So if I go into App Store and just have a quick look at, now unfortunately they've all been updated repeatedly with bug fixes, so I can't actually find the detailed descriptions, but if I go and look at Pages, and just as an example, so this was a month ago they released an update. Yes, that was actually the feature update. So that was the last feature update for Pages. So they added a table of contents view, for example, so you can now navigate through a document if you created a table of contents in it, which previously you could create a table of contents, but you couldn't do anything useful with it apart from print it or edit it. But now it's actually a navigation aid, so it's helpful for going through as a sort of a complex document or something like that. They've added the sort of automatic sync custom shapes and templates to all your devices using iCloud. It sort of seems like a rather esoteric feature, but they've got the same feature across the iPad and Mac versions of the apps across all 3. So now you can basically work on, if you make a particular custom design, you can easily move it across to your other devices. So that's quite handy. Again, alignment guides to master pages is a feature which got brought back again after being missing for several versions. Improved performance when collaborating on documents, which is what prompted me to think, well, we haven't actually done collaborating on documents as a feature, so I can demonstrate that if I can find somebody else to do a quick collaboration example with, but I'm mainly interested in the sort of 2-device editing at the moment. Collaboration support for inserting table of contents, and it's got some extra language support and that sort of thing. So that was Pages. Numbers, I think, hasn't had any changes since the last update, so that should say, yeah, that's also the feature list. So it's not a particularly long set of improvements, but they're gradually improving it. And it's interesting to note that if you look at the corresponding list for the iOS version, they've done a lot more on the iOS version, which makes you think, why is the Mac missing out? What is actually happening is they're catching up. The iPad version keeps getting more features that were in the Mac version. Previously, you had to use the Mac to do certain things, and now there's more and more stuff you can do on the iPad version as well. So if I find numbers on here, so you can see them side by side. Numbers, there it is. And if I look at the feature, oh, that's stability and performance improvements. Unfortunately, where's the version history? There we go. So we're on version 5. There you go. So there you go. There's a list of features that were in version 5.0. You can see it's longer than this list, but if I go through that quickly, make precise changes to table row and column counts and sizes with the format pane. Basically, they've made it easier to edit rows and columns in your spreadsheet, which was previously, when I tried editing a spreadsheet on my iPad, I rapidly gave up because it was too hard. The Mac, I just went back to the Mac and edited it there, and then looked at it on the iPad and didn't do much else. So that hopefully, and I haven't tried it yet, that's easier now to edit things. Performance and usability improvements to smart categories. Again, that's a feature on both. Okay. Save custom shapes, we've just mentioned that one, so that's on both. Create templates for use as a model for new spreadsheets and access them on any device using iCloud. The Mac had already supported that. The iPad now supports that feature, so it didn't previously. Increase maximum zoom level to 400%. That's exciting, but presumably the Mac already supported that feature. Enhancements to Excel and comma-separated value file import. Same. So presumably that means it does a better job of importing those file types. I haven't tried them in anger. Create image placeholders to easily replace images without affecting the formatting of your spreadsheet. That seems to be a new feature only on the iPad, but not one I'm particularly familiar with. So I think that's a catching up, but I couldn't swear to it. Improve performance while collaborating on spreadsheets. That's common. Edit group objects while collaborating is common. And support for vertical text in Chinese, Japanese and Korean, that's the same. So you can see there's been some feature catch-ups, there may be some iPad-specific fixes, but for the most part, they're doing new features in parallel on both of them and catch-ups where necessary is the general pattern. Does that make sense? So I could find the similar list for the others, but I'm just going to use Keynote as an example at the moment. So if I go back to Keynote, there it is, I was running it. If I go into Keynote and go open, where's the browsing tool gone? Open recent. Well, I can just grab the one I just did last night as an example. So this is the presentation I created last night based on the meeting topic I ran off the cuff last month here. So I won't go through the presentation in detail, but I had already created the one for the iPad, and I've used that as a sort of a model to construct the layout for this one. So this particular spreadsheet I have deliberately saved in iCloud in the Keynote folder. So that means I'm using the iCloud Documents feature to save this document directly in my iCloud account, which means it's actually saved on my computer and synced to iCloud. Now the reason I've done that is it means I can access the same document easily in Keynote on my iPad. So I can come into the iPad and you'll see it's hard to read, but it's got iMac Selection Guide early 2009 with a cloud symbol indicating it hasn't downloaded it yet, so it knows that's in my iCloud Documents folder, so I can just tap on that to download it and it will fetch that document. Downloading, downloading, downloading. Thinking about it, and what I actually want to do is start with that as a sort of a general pattern to follow for creating another one to cover MacBook, MacBook Air, and MacBook Pro, and concentrating on the new models that were just released. So that will be a potential one we can use at a future meeting if we have time, because there's going to be lots of other stuff to talk about as well. Okay, so there we go. That's now we have a complication. I may not be able to demonstrate this because I was thinking about it again. Okay, because Keynote on the iPad behaves a little bit peculiarly because it if you're running a presentation, it's expecting to be controlling it from the iPad and the external screen is presenting it. Right now it's in edit mode, so it's able to see it on both. So you can see the two side by side. So I've got the iPad on that side and the Mac on this side. So you can see they've got a similar layout. I can browse through my slides on the left-hand side that I've already created. Come down to this one, for example. The Mac's got this format panel on the right-hand side, which I can hide if I want to see more of my slides and not have to see all the formatting tools. So that's just a pop-out thing. It's got format controls, animate controls, and overall document controls. So there is a similar one like that in Numbers and in Pages as well, where you've got all the formatting tools in this panel on the right-hand side. Pages has a list of sort of page thumbnails on the left-hand side, which you can hide or reveal. So it's a similar sort of concept. And generally speaking, all three applications actually support many of the same features. In fact, you can do things like insert tables from Numbers into Keynote. There's an example of the one I had up on the screen last month with all of the sort of expansion options and things. All I had to do to get that into Keynote was copy it from Numbers and paste it into Keynote. And it's actually an editable spreadsheet, including all the calculations and everything. So Keynote actually supports a high degree of the formulas that are in Numbers. If I change the price of that one to 100, it won't fit. Yep, it updated the price just down there, which is the sum of the ones that are highlighted. So that worked. So yeah, it's actually an editable spreadsheet table in my presentation. So you can create them directly in Keynote, or you can create them in Numbers and copy them through. Similarly, Pages supports the same concept. So you can have a spreadsheet you've created in Numbers, a table in the spreadsheet, and you can put that in a Pages document, and it's still a working spreadsheet. So it's useful to know about that sort of thing. Hello, Shane. As an example of the collaboration, well, not collaboration per se, but the ability to edit a document in two places, one thing I have found quite handy is the iPad is quite nice for browsing through stuff. So I can come along here and just sort of look at this one, and let's say, for argument's sake, I come across this slide and decide, I want to reword that slightly. So just so you can see what happens, I'll pick the same slide on the Mac. So that's the slide I'm looking at. If I come in here on the iPad, I tap on that. It's highlighted as a rectangle the piece that I want. I double tap on it, and I've now got an editing cursor. Upgrading. Right, I'll change that word there from it to memory, because that makes slightly clearer. Upgrading memory later requires major disassembly. So we get the keyboard coming up, and you can only see part of the thing, but and then if I go, how do I get out of that? Now I put the keyboard away and tap outside it. The word has appeared. So it's the iPad has synced the change to iCloud, which has synced it to the Mac so quickly that I didn't even have time to see it change. Not as long as you have a decent internet connection, it's basically that quick. So I can do simple changes to the document on the iPad, and especially if you're doing something like wanting to run a presentation from an iPad, I find it's quite handy having the presentation there in front of you, and you just notice something quickly and you want to make quick tweaks to it. It's very easy to do that sort of thing. It's not so easy to do major edits. So for example, if I want to rearrange these slides, let's see, so I know where I'm working. If I want to, for some insane reason, put the first storage slide one up from there, can I just drag that up? Yes, I can, but I have to sort of tap and hold and then drag and wait for it to pop into the right place. So yes, I can do that. And now how do I get it to move one level to the left? Yeah, I can do that. So if you notice the way that the slides are arranged here, there's a hierarchy. I can collapse the individual sections. So I've deliberately put some of the slides as sub-slides of other ones, so these are all belong underneath the sort of an entry one. So that organisation is actually retained. Now, if I want to undo those changes, I go undo on the iPad, undo again, to bring it back to where it was, and the Mac will magically shuffle them into place. So now you'll be able to see that happening, because it's, where are we? So it's on memory storage graphics. So at some point, this will work out that that's moved. There we go, it just jumped, and that means it's just got it. It's a little bit disconcerting if you start to do things like move the slides around, because the Mac suddenly doesn't know where it is anymore and it loses its context slightly. But if you're just editing the contents of slides, it works quite nicely. So if I actually run the presentation from the iPad, you will no longer see the editing user interface. It will run it on the external display. So it'll start running from that point wherever it's up to, and I can just go tap to show the stepping through the bullet points on there. So I can actually, the iPad is quite a good way of operating a presentation if you don't have a computer with you. And if you want to go backwards, you just swipe left. So I can swipe to earlier slides and find, oh, there's the big complicated one, which isn't quite fitting on the screen there. So that's not really intended to read on a projector screen. It's more intended as you can look at this in the PDF version up close, and it's more to give you an impression of the variation between the models, but it has got all the details there if you need it. So I haven't got an explanation panel for that particular one yet, so I might just tidy it up a bit later on. So how do you get out of there? Hit the X in the corner to close that one. There we go. So general concept makes sense. Basically, I've got a document saved in iCloud. I can edit it simultaneously on either my iPad or my Mac. If I had another Mac, I could do it on two Macs. If you had two people logged into the same iCloud account is the key thing. So those devices are using my Apple ID, my iCloud account, so I can edit everything quite happily. I will mention, but it will not demonstrate because it will require too much time to set up. There is a collaborate feature, which you can click on the Mac version, where you can add people. You can basically send an invitation to other people to collaborate with you on a pages, numbers, or keynote document. And when they get the invitation and they accept it, you have some control over who's got access to it and who can make changes. So you can do show it to other people, or you can have actually interactive editing between both of you. But in principle, this allows two people who are not necessarily anywhere near each other to both edit the same document via iCloud simultaneously. So they're not even linked to the same iCloud account. Both of them have got their own iCloud accounts, and it's just collaborating between the two of them.
Does the document always need to be saved in iCloud?
It certainly for the first method I was using, it did. If I had just had it in a folder on my Mac, there's no way for the iPad to get to it. It's got to be in a place that's accessible to the iPad. For the collaboration method, I haven't experimented enough with it yet to know, but I suspect that one, it has to be in iCloud. It'll need to move it to iCloud in the first place.
Through iCloud, can't it? And
Yeah, but
just set that
I think.
to work with it.
Yeah, I think that the collaboration feature requires the document to be stored on iCloud, and any synchronization is handled internally by iCloud between two people's iCloud accounts, basically. So the document may not be able to be stored locally in that case. I haven't actually tried it though, so I'm not entirely sure. I see another hand, Margaret? Yep.
I don't quite understand that, David. How do the two different iClouds collaborate? Do they get to be linked by some?
If you go back to my first example, so I've got my iCloud account, documents saved there, my Mac, my iPad. Whenever I make changes on any one of them, the software is automatically synchronizing its local copy of the document with the iCloud copy of the document, and then that gets synced to my other devices if they've got it open. That's fine. So all you're doing with the collaboration thing is adding one more sync layer. So you have your copy in iCloud, which is synced between your devices, and whoever you've shared it with has their copy in their iCloud account, and iCloud is syncing their iCloud copy and your iCloud copy. So you've got your triangle here, and then up here it's syncing across there and going to their triangles. There's an extra layer of syncing, but it's all the same thing.
Some command that makes it possible to iCloud.
That's the collaborate feature. There's nothing you have to do to actually make it sync. It just happens automatically, like everything else through iCloud. So if I make an edit and somebody else is collaborating with that document, they will see the edit on their computer within a few seconds. Now, as I said, I haven't tested this in full, but I believe it also supports keeping track of who's made particular changes, so you can tag things as such and such a person edited this part of the document, which is a common feature.
How do you collaborate with?
Sorry?
How does iCloud know who you're collaborating?
On this thing, I tell it. I say I'm going to send an invitation to a particular person, so I can send them a message, for example. The assumption is because they're running the same software, they must have Apple products, so sending a message makes more sense to me, but you could have a link you copy, and then they've got access to it through iCloud web interface or something like that.
So
Google Docs.
Yep, same concept also with Microsoft Office documents. There's a document collaboration feature in that as well, which I think can use OneDrive or other online services. So there's basically that Apple's now got this feature in page numbers and Keynote.
So you really have told them?
Yeah, I've explicitly said I'm going to share this with person X, like Shane for example, and then Shane is allowed to access that document. He will get a copy of the document, he can edit it, his edits will appear on my copy edits will appear on his copy.
So in theory, you could have your capital Apple being done
You could do, yeah.
that way.
As long as everybody involved had a decent internet connection, yes. Which, Graham, your connection may be intermittent enough that could be problematic, but yeah. Yeah. Mine is fine. except when I'm using my cell phone and somebody tries to send me a 2 gigabyte email. Sorry, yeah. Daniel? Yeah.
If you edit the document on your iPad and on the Mac, can you undo that?
Good question. Haven't tried that. So if I go max the CPU work hard full stop. Okay, which one am I on? Understanding that slide 10, just find the right slide number so I can see it. If I come along here and wait for it to update, I'm looking at the second bullet point there. Should have the word harder rather than hard, because that's just the change I've made. It's taking a wee while for it to show up this time. There it is, just popped up, and you'll notice it also jumped to the left column as soon as it did the sync. So if I go into the edit menu, there is no undo. So the undo has to be done on the device that did the edit. So it doesn't retain the edit history on all your devices.
You can't go in to edit it now?
I can, of course, yes, but I can't undo on the Mac what I did on the iPad.
But if you altered that, it would change the...
I can do that, certainly. Whoops, work hard. It's much easier to edit stuff on the Mac. And then on the iPad, it currently says harder, but if we wait a bit, it will pop up and suddenly say hard. But again, that will be a imported change. It's not something the iPad can undo for as such.
Is that an undo at the top of the screen?
Yeah, that's the...
No, yeah, there.
That little thing there is the undo command that page numbers and Keynote support. So it'll take a wee while to notice usually based on the time it took on the Mac. We just leave it. Oh, there it goes, yep, okay. It didn't jump the left-hand column, so the iPad's got one better feature than the Mac version. Okay, yeah, I also wanted to mention the iCloud web interface. If you sign into iCloud.com, and I have to go through two-factor authentication here, so bear with me. That one, and go that one, yes, and then it's going to ask me to authenticate. No, it didn't, okay, because I've already done it. Now, the iCloud web interface, which you have to access from a computer, not from an iPhone or iPad, you'll notice it's got pages, numbers, and Keynote in it. If I go into Keynote, I have actually got a web-based interface for accessing the Keynote documents I've saved in iCloud, which includes the one I'm editing right now. So we can actually look at this document via a web browser at the same time as I'm editing it on my, I don't know care about what's new. I want to go into this. Sorry? I can do it on a PC, that's the key point. Yes, this is the way in which a Windows machine can collaborate with Mac users or iPhone or iPad users through the software. So if I open the same document in the iCloud web interface, now I haven't tried this yet, I don't know how fully, I think the web interface is not quite as fully featured as the Mac version or the iPad version, but at least it has got the ability to do basic editing. So I can come along to the web interface, wait for it to load, it's having a think about it. Loading. It is downloading something. I can see my little snitch software. There we go. It's got the title now, and there we have something happening. It's now got a spinning indicator. There we go. Right there. There's documents. So this is a web page view of editing the same Keynote presentation. So I can scroll down through here in the same way. I can find the same slide that we're currently looking at on the iPad, and I can say, oh, okay, let's just make that correction again, shall we? That should say harder. So I can edit that quite happily in a web browser on my Mac in this case, but it could be a Windows machine, and that of course is editing the document on iCloud, so it will sync back to all my other devices. So if we wait again for a little bit, we should see harder pop up there, as long as it doesn't require anything special to save it, and I don't see any indication that that's the case. Work hard, come on, you can do it, you know how to do it. you'd expect it to be slightly faster because I've edited it directly on iCloud this time rather than having to wait for them. Here it goes. Yep, done. So same principle. So web browser, Mac, iPad or iPhone. So web browser includes Windows. I think there might be some minor restrictions on which web browsers it works with. You can't run anything that's too old. And it's got an undo even. So it's actually mimicking the iPad interface more or less. And you can even run the presentation in the web browser. So I haven't tried this yet, so we'll see what this does. Starting slideshow, it's having a think about it. So this is all run through JavaScript, obviously. Yeah, that works. So that's single stepping through my presentation. So yeah, that seems to be functional.
You got a presentation on that page.
Yeah. What happens if I edit it while it's presenting it? You're about to ask me, were you?
And change that and see if it updates on there.
Okay, I suspect it won't change while it's actually showing the presentation. If I find the memory one, where was it? Understanding options, memory, I think it was a bit further up, wasn't it? There, memory, okay. Work. Let's change that word to work rather than working. Done. Let's see what happens. While it's playing the presentation already, I suspect it won't update that slide, but if I went back and forward again, it might. So we'll have to see, but we'll give it about 30 seconds. If it doesn't do it, then I'll go back and come forward again. Work faster. Not seeing anything. That's sort of about the time we've had before, isn't it? So you'd expect it to probably have fixed it by now. My impression is it's not going to. So if I go back and go forwards again, it still hasn't updated it. So it may be that it actually it keeps a frozen copy while it's running the presentation. So if I go out of the presentation by pushing the escape key, it now tells me it's been edited. So it alerts me to the fact that it's been modified while I've been looking at it. So, okay, that makes sense. So basically the edits only apply to while you're in editing mode. They don't get applied while you're actually running the presentation. So you can't have somebody sitting there doing a presentation while somebody else is rapidly editing on. Well, not just changing, but you've got a team of two people. One person's running the presentation, the other person's rapidly trying to write the bits that are not finished yet. Can't do that. That's cheating.
That might be a reason for a good war.
Yeah. Yes, Margaret.
David, if you've got an iCloud account, it's not doing this automatically, is it? I mean, it's because you're in collaboration mode.
No, this is automatic. If I open the same document in iCloud web interface and or Mac and or iPad version of Keynote, it's editing the same document simultaneously because it's editing the copy in iCloud.
I mean, if I was just doing a table and numbers, for example, it's not out there on iCloud unless I have...
You have to have actually saved the document in iCloud, but by default that's where it saves them unless you tell it not to. So you can save documents on your computer, but the only real difference is that if the document is saved on your computer, edits you make are auto-saved to your drive anyway. If it's saved on iCloud, it's doing exactly the same thing. It's saving it to a copy of the document which is in a folder on your computer, which happens to be synchronized with iCloud. So as you make changes, you're just editing your copy, but in the background, the iCloud software is saying, this has changed, I've got to update that copy.
But you have made that choice
Yes.
in advance.
Yes. Yeah, because most of my presentations I leave in my WelMac folder. This one I deliberately left in the iCloud one so I could demonstrate this feature, and I've left an alias to it from the other place so I know where I put it. Otherwise I'd lose track of it. Yeah, but it's all seems to work very nicely to me.
How often does iWork, different applications, actually save?
It generally saves changes within probably 2 seconds of you not typing anything. So if I'm in the middle of typing, the application can crash, and you can load it again, and it's got your recent edits.
So that applies really on internet.
Yeah, that's right back to Lion and version about 4.1 of Pages, etc. The early iWork 09 version when they introduced the autosave feature. It's very, very quick at saving. You don't have to explicitly save anything, including having an untitled document which you've never saved. It's auto-saving even that until the point when you tell it what you're going to call it and where you're going to put it. It's a very handy feature when you encounter the bug in number zone 9, which happened from about High Sierra, that if you try and edit the table names, it crashes. So, as I discovered, but I didn't lose anything because it had already saved all my changes at that point. So, yeah. Okay, I actually don't have time to try and create the other presentation. I think I've done enough to demonstrate the concept. I'm just doing very simple edits. But one thing I haven't tried yet is doing a large-scale edit or creation of a presentation on the iPad. I did do this as an exercise a while ago and I found it frustrating, but I think it's got better now because the user interface has improved on the app quite a lot. The iPhone, however, I have done a bit of numbers spreadsheet tweaking on an iPhone, and I find that so cumbersome because the screen's so small, it's very hard to actually find your way around. So my gut feeling is that Apple is moving in the direction that the Mac version is already a fully capable editing and presentation tool for this sort of thing. The iPad is now pretty much matching the Mac in features in these applications. The iPhone is really intended as if you need to tweak something, you can do it if you really have to, but don't try and create a major document on the iPhone. But
For doing the presentation.
you can run a presentation with it, of course. That's definitely worthwhile. Yep. So I could get that up on my iPhone as well, but it's probably more trouble than it's worth. So anything else that people want to look at in those applications? Because basically that's sort of the area I want to cover anyway, just to give you an idea of what it's possible to do. And it's nice having this extra feature set. How do I close that again? There's no obvious close with this thing, so I could just close the tab, I suppose. That just goes back into Keynote. That leaves it open. I think I just close the tab, I suppose, and it should work it out. Because it's auto-saved, it shouldn't matter if I've just closed it. But it's similar to the iPad interface, and I can go back to the iCloud interface. No, that's still also Keynote. I can click on that to go back to the main menu. That's right. Yep. Then I can log out if I need to. Okay. Cool. Yep. That's all right. Righto. Any other questions? The iPad's gone to sleep. Try and tell me something.
I have a very quick question.
Yep.
It's not related to that. On your iPad, how do you find out how many battery cycles you've got left on your iPad?
You can't. Apple doesn't tell you that unless you have the extra piece of software that I've got.
How many, what was the question?
How do you find out how many cycles your battery's gone through? On the Mac, you can find that information by going to About This Mac, System Report, and then look under the Power category on the left-hand side. My battery's done 614 cycles out of the 1,000 it's theoretically rated for. So there's no easy way to find that information out on the iPad itself. That they actually have actively hidden that information even from the third-party applications that used to present it.
Same with the iPhone?
And the iPhone, yep. So Apple doesn't provide, they don't provide APIs to give you access to that information.
No, that's not strictly correct. Under version 12 point something on the phone.
They may have brought it back again. They brought back a limited version of it, but not a full version. On the phone only, not on the iPad.
Yeah.
On the phone, because of all the controversy about we're slowing your phone down because your battery can't actually supply enough power problem, they actually added a, where was it hiding? Battery section. In the battery section, it's got battery health, which tells you your maximum capacity and its in peak performance capability. It doesn't actually give you very much information, but I have a third-party utility. On the Mac, I have this piece of software called Coconut Battery, which conveniently
on your Mac, though.
on my Mac, yes, I got the software which I plug in via USB, which we'll probably want to authorise. So
Is there an iPad version of it?
no, there cannot be an iPad version because the information is not available on the iPad.
Well, somewhere.
Oh, that's what I wanted.
Yeah, unless Apple makes it available. Right, here we go. So what have we got? I don't want that one, I want my iPhone. Here we go. So there's my iPhone 10. This is telling me it's on a cycle count of 279. So yes, this software is able to read all the technical information that is available on the iPhone, which Apple only makes available via a diagnostic interface over USB. So you can get to it through iTunes in theory, but iTunes has no way of displaying it, but all the software uses the same mechanism. So
can I plug my iPad in? Will it do the same?
this is my oldest iPad at present, so No, passcode is not visible anywhere. Just checking. Don't like typing in passcodes while I'm being recorded. So my iPad plugged in. iPad Air hasn't spotted that one yet. How do I tell? Do I need to go out of? There you go. I trust the computer. So once I've trusted the computer, no, I've got to try that again. I jumped the gun. It needs me to type in the passcode. Trust the computer. Trust. Type in passcode. There you go. Then I should be able to see the iPad Air showing up, unless I have to refresh the list or something. No, let's try that again. It's my iPad Air I'm looking for, not this Mac. Is there any kind of... Quit, let's run it again. This may just be that it doesn't update reliably. I haven't actually tried that recently. iOS device. I've done that. Yes. iPhone 10. There we go. Now it's got it. Right. iPad Air. So this one is on 74 cycles, really. It's a 2013 model. I haven't used it much, obviously. What's it claiming my iPad Pro is? That's accessing that one via Wi-Fi. So it's on 88 cycles. I haven't used the iPad. Basically, until the iPads get better, I'm not using them much. I'm using my iPhone a hell of a lot more.
Coconut battery?
Coconut flavour with funny syntax. That's the website there. Coconut-flavour, spelt the English way, .com. And it's free for basic features. I don't remember off the top of my head whether you need to pay for it to get. I've got the Plus version, which gives me more functionality. Let me just have a quick look. Coconut. I've been there recently, so I was showing somebody this over the weekend. You may have already seen this, Margaret. Coconut battery. What does Plus give you? Oh, there we go, there's the feature set. So, it gives you, the basic feature set includes the diagnostics, battery health information being saved, displaying your battery details in the menu bar if you want to know that. The Plus version, which you have to pay for, just basically enables features where it gives you Wi-Fi support, so you don't have to plug them in via USB. It gives you a battery lifetime analyzer for your iOS devices, which I haven't looked at. An advanced viewer for the iOS devices, which I haven't looked at, and the Mac, and more printing features and notifications, so it can notify you if your battery's dying or something like that. Probably I haven't had a close look at all that stuff. So I paid for it because I thought the software was so useful. I thought I'll pay for it out of principle, just because it was worthwhile.
So would the free one let you look at the cycles?
Yes, it would. You just have to plug it in via USB, not use Wi-Fi. So, and it's a Mac-only application. I don't think there's a Windows version of it. Okay. So you could do it on your MacBook Air while you've still got it. But well, I can plug it in right now and look at it if you like, so we can check it if you just want to know now. So that's easy enough, because I have the software right here. So you'd have to type in your passcode, those. Do you want to just hop up here? Because it's when I plug this in. When I plug this in, it's going to ask to trust my computer. So
I'll do it at home.
Right, okay, yeah. Now you know where to find it. So yeah. So it was quite interesting actually when on my iPhone 6 Plus, its battery was wearing out rather rapidly, and before Apple put the prices back up again, I got the battery replaced in it. And the iPhone's information about the battery was saying something quite different to this software, which was saying my battery was under half its original usable charge, whereas the iPhone was saying it was on 85% or something like that. I did not believe a word of what my phone was saying because I knew from personal use that this was running out of charge too quickly. So I trust this software. I don't trust what Apple's printing on its screen.
The reason I asked is that when I was looking at some of the adverts on Trading Today, and they were advertising how many battery cycles.
Yeah, well, they'll be using something like this to read it because there's other ways of doing it.
I wonder how they tell that. And so I was looking at my iPad and I couldn't
no, it's
find out
not.
where it was.
There used to be apps that could read that information, but they had to do it using a undocumented method, and Apple banned all the application. It doesn't allow applications in the App Store using undocumented features, basically. So
that isn't an App Store one?
No, that's not.
Why is that all playing hardball? Oh, by the way,
Because if the app uses features that Apple has not documented or published, it means that Apple can't change them without breaking lots of apps. So they ban the apps instead because the apps aren't supposed to be using. It's a violation of the app developers' terms and conditions to actually do that. And
It's something pretty basic you think Apple would do that
Well,
themselves.
eventually what usually happens is if there's enough demand for a particular feature, Apple eventually supplies a sanctioned method of providing access to the technical information that the app wants. But at the moment they're having to do it by digging into low-level stuff that Apple has used for internal things, and if Apple lets them keep using it, it means that Apple can't change how it's implemented. So because Apple's only using it internally, they have full control over it and they don't have to worry about changing things that will break third-party applications unless they're doing things the wrong way. So it's always been the case that third-party applications are not allowed to use undocumented Apple-only interfaces. So if they do that, they usually get banned from the App Store.
Is Coconut Apple specific, or will it tell you
Yes, it is.
about
It's,
your Android?
no, it won't, because it's reading device-specific information, which they're relying on the fact that Apple's providing this information for diagnostic purposes, and they know the format that Apple uses for it. So, yeah. So the same information is available from service providers. They've got tools to do this as well, but that's a tool which is only available to service providers, not to the general public. So they can tell you what your condition your battery's in. So maybe they're just doing it that way.
No, that's helpful, because
Yeah. Okay. Anything else while we're here? If not, I think we're done. Thank you, folks. So, yes, at some point I'll create a similar presentation for covering MacBook Pros. Haven't had a chance to do that yet, though.
So will that comparison be available?
Which one, sorry?
A summary of the iMacs.
That one is already available.
Yes, sir.
That presentation, I included a link to the PDF version of it in the email I sent out last night with Capital Apple. So if you've got the electronic magazine, there are a couple of links in there, one to the iPad and one to the Mac one. And that's not the keynote presentation, but it's a PDF of it, so you can read the whole thing at your leisure. Yeah. Before I did any of my edits tonight, so I don't know what state it's in now, but very minor edits there. Yep.
Dennis, how long ago did Dennis go?